Welcome, everyone, then, to This Week in History. I'm Mike.
I'm Will.
There we go. And we're going to be discussing a thing that happened this week in history.
That's right.
Many years ago.
Many years ago.
Step one is addressing the well-actuallys from last week. Last week we discussed Pompeii and...
the man, not the city.
The guy?
Yep. The guy. Well, I had mentioned that Caesar was angry that Pompey had died, and it was largely for selfish reasons. He wanted his, have his triumph, and also said that it was like his friend and a respected guy. But it was kind of more of an add-on to that. Was also apparently the senators that were still in Rome had asked that Caesar not kill any senators and also bring Pompey back alive.
Huh?
So, because Pompey was murdered, Caesar wasn't able to do that, and it made him look bad and also not follow the rules of the Senate.
Got it.
And then the other one was just Cleopatra. Was, I believe, like Cleopatra the 4th or the 7th. I probably should have double-checked but somebody was nice enough to say exactly which Cleopatra it was, because there were many Cleopatras. It was a common name for royal women.
Sure.
I could just...
Was she the last Cleopatra?
I don't believe she was, but I can double-check that, too.
Okay.
We could have another well-actually.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to check out Cleopatra on the oldie interwebs.
So,
she was the 7th.
She was the 7th. And last?
We're going to find out.
All right. I guess
she's actually a really fascinating character that we could do a whole thing on, but
someday we'll discuss
Cleopatra.
Not today.
Not today. Because today we're talking about somebody that is from much later on in history.
All right, well, let's move on to that. So if you want to engage with comments and stuff, if we say anything either inaccurate or miss a point, or you have something further you want to add to it, you can add in the comments and we'll discuss it next week. Quick programming note: I know we've only done the show twice, but next week will be happening on Tuesday instead of Thursday, Tuesday the 12th. But we'll also record that and be able to put it up online. You can watch it whenever.
Yep.
But it'll be going out Tuesday. We'll talk about that in a little bit later after we talk about today's topic. Today's topic is Charlemagne.
Charlemagne Magna.
Magna.
We pronounce it Charlemagne. I believe the French is Charlemagne.
Charlemagne. Yes, French. The French, as usual, add multiple letters that you just ignore all those letters.
Right? Don't even need them. A lot of S's that are never pronounced. There's a G in there.
Because of the deep mines of letters they have in France.
They have so many of them, they just need to get rid of them.
Ignore them.
Oui.
They feel in your mouth, you just feel them, but you do not say them.
Exactly.
All right, so we're discussing Charlemagne and his being crowned king of
the Franks.
Franks.
There was more than one Frank.
There we go.
The Franks were a group of people. They were a tribe of people in what is now modern-day France. Spoiler. And they were descended from different Celtic groups. They were their own identity.
Okay.
His grandfather, well, actually, he was a long line of rulers. So Charlemagne is considered by many to be the father of Europe. Because he helped distinguish France and German cultures.
Oh, okay.
He helped to preserve a lot of these things.
What's between France and Germany? Is there like a mountain range in there?
No, there's a river.
River, right.
Yes. There's a mountain range by them. There's the Alps.
The Alps, yeah. I just didn't know it divided France and Germany.
There's a river.
Yeah, okay.
The Rhine. Or is it the
Rhone?
Rhine or Rhone? Put that in the comments, folks.
Yeah.
Probably should know that.
I feel like it's Rhone, but it could be Rhine.
And there's a border. There's the Alsace-Lorraine region, which is something that Germany and France fought about forever. Forever. But a little bit of history to know about Charlemagne, we have to know about where he comes from.
Yes.
So Charlemagne's grandfather was an equally famous guy who had a very famous event in history that actually took place this same week. And it was a toss-up between his famous event and Charlemagne's famous event.
Well, maybe we'll hit this one next year.
We might come back around to it. So his grandfather was a very famous warrior whose name was also Charles. And he was called Charles Martel, the Hammer.
Oh.
And he was very famous because he was the mayor of the Palace of France. And what that means is he was in, or the Palace of Paris. At that time, there were a group of kings called the Merovingians. They were in power, but not super in power.
Okay.
They just more in name. And whoever was the mayor of the palace actually held all the power. They ran all the meetings, they had all the money, and basically the king was just expected to nod and smile and to wave his hand, kind of like how a modern monarch would act.
Okay.
Uh,
Crowns and stuff.
Crowns and such, they had crowns.
Throne.
They had a throne.
Castle.
Fancy robes. But actually, when they were done with the meetings at the castle, they went to their house, which was much smaller.
Okay.
And they had to be driven there on a cart.
Well, all right.
That was what they did.
That was luxury in the old times.
Luxury. There was luxury. There was a religious component to that. It was supposed to show humility.
I see. Okay.
But so Charles Martel,
The Hammer.
he fought a massive invasion from Spain because the Moors, who are a North African Islamic culture, had conquered the majority of Spain and were riding north. They crossed the Pyrenees, which is the mountain that separates France from Spain.
Okay.
And the people of Western Europe were very concerned about this. So Charles gathered together an army, and at the Battle of Tours, he fought them and beat them so badly they never tried it again. Ever.
He laid the hammer down on them.
He did.
As it were.
He did, and that is where he got the title.
Is that where he got the
Yeah, they called him the Hammer because he's the hammer that broke the invasion.
Oh.
So he comes back, he's very famous, everybody's, good job, you're awesome.
Yeah.
And he basically says, well, I did such a good job, and the king's kind of pointless. Why do we have a king if he doesn't do anything? And the Pope said, good point, you're the king now. And he said, okay. When he passed the throne on to his two sons. One of them didn't like ruling, they were co-rulers.
Okay.
That was what they passed on. That was the rules. Your children ruled equally.
Now, I said, how were the kings picked before this?
Elections.
Okay.
They were elected. They were elected from a group of leaders, and it wasn't passed on father to son.
Okay.
Usually it was, but kind of had to be ratified by all the nobles.
Sure.
The mayor of the palace was strictly voted on. That was, you were either, it wasn't hereditary.
Okay.
But Charles Martel and his family were so powerful and well, they did a good job. It's basically hereditary.
Okay.
So Charles does this great thing, becomes the king, passes the title on to his two sons.
Says, hey, I know this democracy thing was working okay, but how about we do this king thing for a bit?
This. And yes. And the democracy was more of a, like 12 really rich old guys in a room decide.
Okay. So,
kind of like today.
what's that? The aristocracy?
Yes. Yes. The very, very wealthy landed nobility.
Plutocracy?
Yes, that's what it's wealthy. It's governed by the wealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, which is also
it's not officially what we are.
But
it's hard to deny that that's kind of what we are.
A lot of money.
Not a lot of poor people in the Senate.
Yeah. Maybe one, but not anymore.
I don't know.
You might start out poor. You're not anymore.
Yeah, see.
So, Charles Martel passes on the throne to his two sons, Charlemagne and Pepin the Short.
Pepin the Short. I've heard of him.
Short. And Pepin the Short becomes sole king because his brother's like, this is stupid. I don't want to be in charge of anything. I don't like this.
Stupid.
These are dumb. I'm going to become a monk.
I would be. Oh, good choice.
So he goes to become a monk. However, he is too famous. Everyone comes to visit him at the monastery.
Oh, it's hard to have solitude when you're too famous.
He's trying to be right and focus on religion. And this is back, when people who were religious, half of them actually were very I just want to sit and write and learn about religion.
Yeah.
And they would transcribe, the Bible by hand and then illuminate the pages.
This is 700, folks. This is 700 something.
This is 768 is where we're going to be. This is years before that.
Yeah.
So yes. 750 maybe is when he abdicated.
Give or take.
Becomes too famous, decides, well, forget this. I'm going to go to a further up the mountain monastery. And he went to what is called Monte Cassino, which is a very famous abbey now. Because he was famous, they put a bunch of money into it.
And now you can play blackjack there.
That's sure. Yeah, it's Monte Cassino. You can either worship or worship.
All right.
So anyway, Pepin the Short has two sons as well. When he
was he called Pepin the Short to him, or was that later?
Probably later.
Probably later.
I don't think the king. appreciated being called.
Hey, stop it.
Don't call me that.
I'm down here.
Made it harder
Yeah.
for him to stab people.
Sure.
But he was a good administrator. He was a well-respected king. Then it was kind of expected that his sons would be great. And one of them was Charles. This is kind of confusing because it goes Charles, Pippin, Charles.
Pippin or Pepin?
Called both.
Okay.
Pippin or Pepin.
All right. Sure.
And this isn't the one that the musical was made after.
Nor the one that the Hobbit is.
Correct. Different Pippin altogether.
All right.
Also short, though. Pippin the Short.
Easy to get confused.
Might have
One is
been a
fictional.
hobbit. Might have been a hobbit, though.
Got to check his feet.
You gotta look.
All right.
They're hairy, and if he never wears shoes, hobbit.
Hobbit.
So, Charles and his brother, also named Charlemagne, are a little different because they both want to be in charge.
All right.
Charlemagne gets bitter.
Charles obviously wants to be in charge.
Charles wants to be
Because Charles in charge is
Yeah.
of my days and my nights.
have his days and his nights, and the Franks and the Saxons,
Yeah.
and the Lombards, and a bunch of other people. So they have kind of they get along fine while Dad's alive, but then
Everyone does.
once Dad's gone, they both get crowned, and that's where our date is. So it was October 7th, 768 AD.
Write it down. That'll be on the test.
This is important. They both get crowned, same time, roughly. I believe they were in different parts of the country.
Oh.
So rather than have to hike them both back together, they got crowned separately.
Okay. How old were they at the time?
Charles was 20.
All right.
Carloman was a little bit younger.
Okay.
3 years younger, I think. And it didn't matter that he was older, and
Sure.
it didn't matter Carloman was younger. They were supposed to co-rule. And it wasn't they split the country in half. It was you get this region, you get that, you get this, you get that, you get this, you get that. And they were supposed to rule it as equals.
Oh, okay.
Well, that only goes so far where people can share power equally. Somebody eventually wants to be in charge.
Oh.
So Charles he gets put in charge of kind of securing the country. He campaigned with his father during his father's wars.
So he is the Hammer Junior.
He's grandson junior. But yes,
Hammer the Third.
the Hammer the Third.
Please, Hammer, don't hurt him.
He's a well-respected warrior. He's, at 20 years old by then, if you were a noble, you knew how to fight. You had to. But since he rode around with his father for like a decade, he kind of figured out, this is how you lead soldiers, this is how you fight. So he gets charged with cleaning up the Aquitaine region of modern-day France.
Where's that?
That is in kind of it's the breadbasket. It's kind of southeastern.
Okay.
Very.
They're called the Aquitaine?
It's called the Aquitaine.
Sounds watery.
It is. It's got rivers that feed it. It's a very important chunk of land that was part of disputes throughout all of France's history.
All right.
Yes. So he gets charged with kind of cleaning that up, taking care of it, fighting rebels, and he expects his brother to help, and his brother doesn't help, even though his brother promised to help.
Ugh.
So that drives them further apart.
Younger brothers.
They're the worst. And you're an only child, aren't you?
Nah, I got older and younger.
Oh, see, me too.
They're the worst.
They
Both.
are. Yes. You just got yelled at by a cat.
Sorry, there's a cat. He had to chime in on his knowledge of history.
Really?
You have no knowledge. Go.
He's talking about brothers. He doesn't like his either. So anyway, they kind of become more divided. People try to talk to both sides, kind of figure out who's right, who's wrong. They never come to blows though, because Carloman dies of a disease, natural causes. The reason why there's some question about if maybe he wasn't murdered is because when he dies, his wife flees the country.
Not a normal thing for a grieving widow to do.
Typically, no, unless you're nervous that maybe you're next.
I suppose, yeah.
So she takes her kids and runs to northern Italy and allies with the enemies of the Franks, actually, the Lombards. The Lombards ruled the majority of Italy, like basically from Rome north and a bit further south. They kind of ran all over it and were in charge of it. So Charles is like, well, I guess I'm the king then. Okay. So he's the sole king of the Franks.
Can't imagine he said it that way.
Probably.
Well, I guess I'm the king.
Yes, if I have to.
Here I go.
Twist my arm.
Yeah.
I guess I'll be the king. So Charles becomes sole king of the Franks. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of the He's the heir of Charles Martel. He's supposed to be this big deal. And he was specifically named after Charles Martel because of that name, because they expected really big things of him. And he does not disappoint. Over Charles's reign, he defeats the Saxons, who are the longtime rivals of the Franks. He defeats the Lombards, who are Italy. He defeats the Moors in Spain. And he defeats basically everybody who ever comes up against him. And he only loses in one battle throughout his 47-year reign.
Now, these people are attacking, or is this them aggressing?
Bit of both.
Okay.
Bit of both. He preempted certain attacks.
Okay.
So the Saxons are they're kind of northwestern Europe, up to the Baltic Sea, and then into Germany at this point. And this is how he makes France and Germany kind of one country, but also separate. Like, he gives them specific identities almost.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
He fights the Saxons for 30 years, and they only have 2 large battles, and they're both within a week of each other. He wins them both very handily, to the point where the Saxons, from then on, it's just raids, little fights here and there. And eventually the Saxons submit. This is crazy, we're tired of doing this. We don't want to play this game anymore. And what he does kind of a clever thing. Rather than just put his soldiers in their chunk of the country, he takes families from the Saxons and moves them into France.
Ah.
And he doesn't oppress them. He's just like, well, you're living here now, and you're living there. And he just kind of shuffles the population around. He puts some of the Franks in Saxony, some of the Saxons in Francia.
Now, how obligatory was this move?
Probably at the point of a sword.
Yeah, is it?
When you win in these times, you get to kind of dictate terms. But the land in France was actually, in a lot of ways, nicer.
Oh, sure, it seems nice.
It's good land. So it wasn't that he was...
Would they be set up with a place to live, or just
Yes.
like, all right, you're here now?
He gave them land.
Okay.
He gave them land to farm, places to be. He included their warriors in his military.
I'm looking to change my life up a little bit anyway.
He let
Might
their
as
nobles
well.
stay nobles. He didn't despoil the land. He didn't murder everybody. He's actually considered pretty magnanimous in victory.
But it wasn't a choice. Okay.
Except once. Charlemagne was mostly considered a very benevolent ruler. But one time he murdered 4,500 people.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? Who at this time has
some
not
point
massacred almost 5,000 people? And they were
happen.
prisoners, which was...
Why did he do that? Why did he do that?
Basically to show dominance.
Oh.
He was particularly angry with the Saxons, and there was this long campaign, and he just said, kill them. They're the bad guys.
Well, that would wrap things up for them, I suppose.
It did really hurt the Saxon war effort.
Yeah,
and it took the spirit out of a lot of them. It's like, well, he just murdered 4,500 people.
Like citizens, too? Or like a...
I believe they're mostly warriors.
Okay.
But there aren't a ton of... Because his guys wrote the histories.
So
this is mostly a footnote.
A little vague on the details.
Very vague. It's amazing that it's even mentioned. His #1 biographer at the time doesn't talk about it.
Which seems a bad sign in the future.
Yes.
He doesn't mention this thing.
He didn't mention this thing. That doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Okay.
Which kind of brings us to an important note about history in general, is that you can't just go, okay, I found this source that says this one thing, and it's right.
True.
You have to kind of dig. You have to find the context of things and say, this is what we know for sure, because we found artifacts or writings or people on every side said the same thing.
Yeah.
That's important. And
it's hard to find a completely unbiased historian.
Right. And if you only are, like when we talked about the wars with Pompey, most of the writings on that were written by Caesar.
Yeah.
His rival. Most of it's really flattering towards Caesar. He never is outright like, Caesar was the bad guy in this, even though there were times where obviously he would have been.
Sure. So
it's an interesting thing to talk about. But Charlemagne had surprisingly good relationships outside of that. He got on with people of all sorts of different cultures, which at the time was very weird because in later years he's considered this great crusader, this great warrior for the church, because when he took the Saxons into his country, he made them convert. He said, you got to be Christian to live here.
Right. How long had Christianity been around by then?
Well, it had been around since roughly like a decade after. Well, so Jesus was born in 0, right?
That's right. Happy birthday, 0.
Happy birthday at
Easy
0.
to count.
Then he lived to be about 30.
33 was
33.
the number I heard, yeah.
Then he died.
Yeah. Allegedly.
Allegedly. Came back. So, according to that. So, who knows? So, he's allegedly killed. And then they kind of have this existential crisis for a while.
Sure.
This is something we could talk a whole podcast
Yeah, that's a whole
about
other
the
topic.
foundation of the church. But
Yeah.
eventually, it settles in Rome.
Okay.
Where the Romans at first don't like the Christians. They treat them horribly. They feed them to lions.
Yeah.
But a lot of the Christians in Rome were extremely political and murdered people and did all kinds of crazy extremist stuff. Not every Christian, just some of them.
And these are for Christians from many years ago.
This is a long time ago. Everybody was murdering everybody. We talked about Rome last week.
You know how you flame people now on Twitter? This is back then. You'd actually flame them
You just
with
set 'em
real
up.
fire.
Real fire.
Yeah.
Real fire. Slowly. So there was a lot of extreme behavior. So the Romans didn't like them. And then the Romans, it was, blood for blood. The Romans did a bad thing.
Yep.
They did a bad thing. But eventually there was a Roman civil war, and the emperor said, how do I unite all my people? I'll worship this new faith.
Okay.
So he chooses to become a Christian. Tells this grand story about how he was inspired to become a Christian because he saw a sign of God, and then wins.
Yeah.
So then he solidifies Christianity as the Church of Rome, of the Empire. And then even after the Roman Empire fell in 476 AD, or near, the religion endures because the eastern part of the Roman Empire is fine.
Okay.
And that also ties into this whole area of time is a lot of the time called the Dark Ages. And that's considered kind of a no-no term nowadays because it wasn't so bleak.
Oh.
A lot of good stuff happened during that. It's just people oftentimes consider anything after the fall of Rome to about the time of Charlemagne is just bad.
Yeah.
Just horrible. Everything is just bad.
But it just wasn't written down much.
It just wasn't written down
And now
as
it's
much.
organized.
And that was the thing. It wasn't so organized, and it was, because it was usually a lot of the priests were writing this stuff down. They didn't like a lot of the stuff that was going on, so these people are horrible. There's no culture here. This is bad. And then later history kind of applies this term and changes things around. But at the same time, the Eastern Roman Empire in Constantinople was doing very, very well for itself. It's super wealthy. It's kind of a bastion of learning and knowledge, multiculturalism.
Come check out the Dark Ages. Not as dark as you think.
Not as dark as you think.
Come, have a good time. Enjoy our mosaics.
Yes. There is kind of a nice little... it was colder then because there was a mini ice age during the Dark Ages. So there, you could say it's kind of darker because of that. Winters were a little longer, so it was literally maybe a little darker.
Okay.
But not for the whole span. Just for couple.
I think that may be true of any age. You can look back at any time. Well, that was good or bad, depending on how you want to look at it.
I think a lot of people would say the Romans being in charge of things was a pretty dark age.
Unless you're a Roman.
Unless you're a Roman. Doing pretty great. And that's why I think a lot of the people are like, hey, just because Rome wasn't doing well doesn't mean people weren't happy.
Right.
And suggesting Rome was, the beacon on the hill. Not so nice for the people they enslaved. So that kind of brings us back to Charlemagne.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't derail this. We did find. I should have noted in general because they had a pope by this time. So religion, Christianity must have been established that much.
Yes.
That they had a pope.
Yes. Well, the first pope was Peter.
Oh yeah,
Peter.
It was in
Saint Peter. He was one of the apostles.
Yeah.
So they've had a pope for a while, but he didn't really have a throne.
Right.
By this time, Rome has become after the Romans decided Christianity's good, they built churches in Rome and secured the leader of the Roman church is here, specifically so they could control the Roman church.
Yes.
If the emperor is sitting right next to you with a legion of soldiers, you're gonna do what he tells you.
Right.
There's a lot of politics.
And he has that big gold throne and pointy hat. Trust that guy.
You gotta listen to him.
Okay.
He's in charge. He's got the pointy hat. I feel like we need more
pointy hats,
that big domed pointy hat.
We can arrange that.
All right, I like it. Have a session on it. So Charlemagne, though, is kind of considered like this heir to the Roman Empire because he becomes this hero of Christianity by fighting the Saxons, having them convert to Christianity. That's wonderful for the church. We got more members, yay! And then also he fights the Lombards who were beating up the Pope.
Oh.
Like, they literally threatened to murder him, and he fled Italy and said, "Can I crash here on your couch for a few
They want to
weeks?
beat up a pope. Let me stay here.
They want to put a pope in a pizza.
Oh,
Literally.
I'm a little pope.
I don't like this."
All right.
The Italian people are going to watch this and be like, "We are deeply offended." No,
fine.
they're fine. I feel
I've
like
been told my Italian accent is great.
that's what was it by Italians?
I don't remember.
So yes, at one point the Pope does say, "This is getting a little dicey here, dear Charlemagne. I'm getting attacked by the Lombards. They're oppressing me. They're trying to extinguish the church and control the church, and they're robbing people. They're killing people. This is a problem." Now Charlemagne's got kind of this long-term issue with the Lombards because they were rivals,
Sure.
and then also there were some marriage issues from his family and their families. And that's also where his brother's widow was to hide out with the Lombards. We remember Charlemagne's brother died.
Yep.
His wife runs
away for no particular reason.
No particular reason.
Just happened to want to run away.
Wanted to go somewhere.
Sure.
So she goes there. And it's alleged that she kind of prodded him to start raiding Charlemagne's territory. The king was Desiderius. And so
the king was of who?
The king of the Lombards at the time was Desiderius.
Desiderius Lombard.
Desiderius Lombard.
That is a name.
Well, I think it was just king of the Lombards.
Sure.
But,
either way.
right.
It's quite a good name.
It's a good name.
Yeah.
So they eventually come to blows. Charlemagne destroys them, like, completely. He just shatters their army in a couple of battles. It's kind of overwhelming. And he just says, "You know what? I'm tired of beating you," because he fights them, goes home. They start up immediately again.
Ugh.
He turns around, and bear in mind, this is all on foot.
Don't make me turn this army around.
And he has to turn the army around.
Oh boy! When we get home,
and he does. He slaps him hard, and he says, "You know what? I'm not doing this again." He has the king not killed. He has him tonsured, which means he shaves the back of his head.
Tonsured.
Tonsured.
That word will be on the quiz.
Yes.
Tonsured.
And sent off to become a monk.
Oh.
It was like a vacation for some people,
Sure.
and a punishment for others. But if you didn't want somebody to hold land and be in charge, you'd send him off to be a monk.
Huh.
So he gets mad at this guy. He's tired of fighting. He says, "You're a monk now."
Boy, what's the first day of monk class going to be like for that guy? He's going to show up at the monastery like, "Hey, check out this guy. He used to be king."
Quite a downgrade.
Where's my cot?
You can
Cot.
Here's some straw. Use as a pillow.
Yeah.
And you can go sleep over there on the stone.
Oh, where are my servants? No. Yeah.
You'll be cleaning this house.
Oh man,
The whole thing. For everybody. You're the new guy.
that's gotta be rough.
That would be a transition.
If that was modern day now, they'd make a reality show sitcom out of it.
My first day as a monk.
The king of nothing.
Monk life.
Monk's life.
Monk's life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, too, because Charlemagne's uncle chose this life.
Right.
He was a king, and then he just went...
That's gotta be a vastly different experience, though.
Yes.
Choosing to be a monk and having to be a monk.
Yeah. Well, and he got to go there with his wealth. Some wealth, at least. And, the blessing of his brother.
Okay.
So he went to the nice monastery.
Oh, see?
Charlemagne probably said, "Where's the worst monastery that we can think of? It's kind of like, in the old, like, Cold War movies. When you're done here, we're going to station you in Antarctica."
Oh, yeah.
Here. So he goes to the monastery and...
Or would it be like one of those 80s inner city school dramas where the principal comes in and turns that school around?
Yeah, or Michelle Pfeiffer puts her boots up on the desk. And William Shakespeare was a rap artist. I feel like...
All right, well,
it'd be like if all those kids just beat him up.
We'll pitch the King of Lombards as a monk movie later.
You could probably get it on Netflix.
Yeah.
They'll make anything these days.
All right.
Let's
go write this down as a comedy idea.
Write it down.
King to monk.
King to monk. How it worked for some. So Charlemagne not only does that, then he says, "You know what? I'm your king now. So they crown him their king, which is why it's important to say 768 is when he's king of the Franks.
Oh, okay.
Because he becomes king of the Lombards 6 years later on the 10th of July, 774.
Oh, okay. But he wouldn't be able to do that without being the king of the Franks, which is what we're talking about.
Right, yes. So this all kind of leads one thing to another.
Yeah.
Kind of like how we talked about last week with the death of Pompey, kind of does a domino effect. So now Charlemagne's king of two kingdoms. So now he owns all of modern-day France.
Nice.
He's still fighting the Saxons at this point.
I said nice, but he also probably owned Nice.
He definitely owned Nice.
Which is nice.
Which is nice. I've heard it's nice.
Yeah.
I asked, my brother went to Nice. I asked him if it was nice, and he said if he could hit me, he would. But he was on the phone. So
Sure. This conversation has to look funny written down.
Yes. It's all the same words.
Nice.
It's very confusing. It kind of turns into a who's on third.
Sure. Who's on first?
So, anyway.
I don't know who's on third.
I have no idea.
No, I don't know who's on third.
Oh!
First day in the comedy biz. All right, where were we?
Me embarrassing myself by screwing up the joke that I've heard. Anyway. So Charlemagne has become king of the Lombards.
Yes.
That makes him in charge of all of Italy north of Rome. Except Rome. He does not run Rome.
Is that run by the
Pope? The Pope is also the landlord. He's basically a king at this point.
Yeah, okay.
For a very long time, the Pope was
so I'm sorry. So this Pope ran away and said, "Hey, they're trying to beat me up." And
Yep.
he came back and slapped him down and said, "No," and put him back. Put that same Pope.
Put the Pope right back into place.
Back in the thing. Right.
Yep. So Charlemagne's become buddies with the Pope. The Pope
Sure.
really appreciates it. Good job.
Good to have God on your side.
It really is, especially when, that's a big deal at the time, like
Sure.
a really big deal, and especially since religious leaders had a lot of land and a lot of money. This Pope is kind of there was an area around Rome called the Papal States, eventually. It's not what it's called now, it's just called Rome.
Yeah.
So the Pope ran that kind of like a king. He got money from it. He had tenants and farmers and soldiers and all this stuff working for him. So he ruled this land, but only as long as he could control it. So that's when the Lombards came in and started muscling in on his territory. And he's like, "Hey, they're stealing my stuff." Charlemagne says, "No, only I get to do that." He beats him up.
You leave my Pope buddy alone.
Leave my Pope buddy alone.
Yeah.
Don't make me come back. So then he does eventually go back to France,
Sure.
and runs it. And he does certain things that are lauded as being really cool for the time. He's, while a strong Christian, he also is very tolerant towards foreigners.
Okay.
Loves having foreigners at his court. He's very modest in his dress and his style. He dresses like the common people do, just maybe a higher quality fabric. He doesn't like silks, doesn't like really fancy stuff. The only fancy stuff he has is his sword is fancy.
All right.
Because he's a warrior.
You
king.
want a fancy sword?
Yeah,
you want a good sword.
People made him a really fancy sword, like with jewels and stuff,
Oh,
and he
yeah.
only used it like 3 or 4 times.
Sure.
Like for festivals and stuff.
This is for my festive stabbing.
Yes, festive stabbing. And he had a very fancy silk attire once.
You wait here. Let me get my special sword.
Yeah, good one.
I want to enjoy this.
This is an important occasion, and it requires my important sword. That is kind of how they did things.
Okay.
And they had special swords for special things. But Charlemagne was more of I'm going to use
Look at
this
a sword caddy with them. Sir, I recommend a
sword.
4-iron.
I recommend this.
A 4-iron.
4-iron with the gold handle.
Yes.
4-iron, it's the right length. Good weight.
I'm going to make a note of sword caddy.
Yep. Should we have the
Write
driver?
down all these little ideas in case I do a Shark Tank idea later. So sword caddy.
Sword caddy.
All right.
That sounds like a great idea. Great way of carrying all your swords.
Sure, yeah.
If you're a reenactor and you carry swords around,
Yeah.
little caddy.
A little sword caddy.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see that like fencing bendy one. Sometimes you do a broadsword.
Yeah, you got one each.
Yeah.
Or if you have to be like the prop master.
Yeah.
For a movie. Carry 50 swords around with it.
Yes.
Very heavy. Put little wheelies on it. A little
Oh.
wheeled caddy.
Yeah, and you can have those little knitted coverings on
Yep.
them, just keep them
Keep them
safe.
safe
Yeah.
so they don't get wet and damaged.
That's right.
This is what these podcast thingies are for.
Learning new ideas.
Nobody steal that.
Got it.
That's Mike's idea.
Written down.
All right, so Charlemagne has done some internal stuff to kind of make the administration run more smoothly. So at the time, there were all of these dukes, and a duke is a very powerful, basically mini king
Yeah.
who runs his territory completely. He gets rid of the majority of the dukes.
Oh.
He's just
Gets rid of them.
No. He demotes them.
Okay.
Basically, he says this is a stupid thing that undercuts. It gives too much power to 5 guys, and also takes away from me being in charge of everything.
Yeah. Okay.
So what he does is he sets up counts, and counts are in charge of like a county.
Okay.
Later on in medieval history, a count is actually a very powerful nobleman, but at this point, not so much. They're an administrator who runs an area. They work directly for Charlemagne. They're appointed by him. And everything, the relationships at this time, everything's very personal. He talks to these guys. He gets to know them personally. It's not just like, let me read their resume. Yeah, this guy sounds good. Their resume is, well, this guy fought with me at the battle of such and such.
Yeah,
and he was pretty good with a sword, so I'm going to put him in charge of
It's
defense.
not what you know, it's who you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, because at the time, to be a king, you had to prove yourself all the time. Everything you did was to prove yourself. He was a good administrator. We know he's a good administrator because if he wasn't, he would have been probably murdered, and the kingdom would have been in ruins.
Yeah.
He picked good people because he couldn't be everywhere at once. He seemed to have kind of a good idea of how to be energetic and get stuff done, but not push his luck.
Okay.
The one time, so like a great example of this is he eventually invades Spain, wants to fight the Moors.
Yep.
They keep raiding his territory.
Yeah.
And these are the guys his grandfather fought. So it's like,
wrap this one up.
Wrap this one up.
Yeah.
Well, and he doesn't think that he's going to conquer all of Spain.
Okay.
But he's got some.
That one's got mountains in the way too, right? Between Spain and France.
That's the Pyrenees.
Yeah.
And he goes through what's called the Basque region now. And the Basques are still, I think they're still Basque nationalists who do some stuff that's not considered great in Spain. A little bit of a revolution. So this territory is always considered rebellious by everybody who rules it because the Basques are very,
Sure.
this is our land and go away.
I feel like there's a lot of places like that on borders of countries.
Yes,
Yeah.
because one country says this is ours, the other country says it's theirs, and then the people who actually live there like,
I don't know.
not really,
Yeah.
we live here.
Hey,
Hey,
you drew a line down the
Yeah.
middle of my house.
that's where I live though. No. It's kind of the Eddie Izzard bit.
Yeah.
We claim this for Britain. We can't claim it. This is India. We live here. There's 500 million of us. Do you have a flag? No.
There we go.
No flag, no country. And that's kind of what happened here. Is the Moors conquered it. The Franks conquered it. They fought for it back and forth. The native Spanish people fought for it. And then the people who became the Basques were just kind of sitting there going, why has everybody got to fight here?
Yeah.
And also everybody has to go through there to get from Spain to France.
Yeah.
So they're just kind of tired of this.
Gonna put up a toll booth is what we're gonna do.
They should have, and they kind of did.
Yeah.
But it's a different kind of toll booth.
Oh.
It's more of the Sonny and Godfather kind of toll booth.
Right. Oh, good Godfather reference. Check it out. Godfather.
Godfather.
Good movie.
Great. Francis Ford Coppola. Good stuff. But so Charlemagne has an issue with the Gascons in southern France. And these are another group of people who kind of rise up and fight all the time. They're related to the Basques.
All right.
He's beating them up, decides to move south, fights in Spain, besieges several cities, conquers several small armies. He's got this huge army that nobody can really fight against.
Yeah.
And basically says, give me a lot of money and I'll leave you alone.
Oh.
So the Moors are like, yeah, that's easy. That's easier than killing everybody and fighting and getting our guys killed. Yeah, here, we got
Sure.
tons of gold.
Money? We got money. We
got
stole
money.
it. We stole it from the French.
We stole it when we came here the first time.
We want it back. Yeah.
So they give Charles a lot of gold and say, go away.
Yeah.
And he does. He's like, all right, good. That's good diplomacy. And he's kind of high on his horse, literally and figuratively,
Sure.
as he rides out of the country. and he's got all of this treasure. Well, that slows down his baggage train.
Ugh.
Back then, the army didn't have helicopters doing airdrops, bringing food, you had to carry everything with you. And most of the time, you wanted your soldiers to travel with their weapon and their armor. And these guys would carry. Back then, his soldiers were famous for carrying kind of a bigger shield, not as big as the Romans, spear, sword, probably a dagger, and armor that could range from chainmail, which is very heavy steel armor, to just really thick padded felt, which could actually stop an arrow, because they usually weren't fired from here away,
right.
And then a helmet. So they're already carrying this heavy gear. They got to go over the mountains. You don't want them to have to carry 70 days worth of food
and water.
So you got all these oxes pulling carts and horses pulling carts and all this stuff. Got a lot of stuff on there in the baggage train, so it moves slower. You usually go as fast as the baggage.
Oh, sure.
Because you don't want to run the army in front and go, oh, I'm hungry now.
Yeah, gotta go all the way back. So they're on the way back, and with food and stuff like that, but now also laden down with piles of gold.
Lots of, yes, and it's the gold is just heavy.
Yeah,
and
it's that thing that always bugged me about D&D campaigns.
Yeah,
in general. So the bag of holding, is it?
Yep.
You can put everything in. That seems like a cheat.
That was a cheat.
Yeah,
because gold is heavy.
The logic of it is like, after I got 50 gold pieces, well, that's all I'm ever carrying.
Yep.
50 gold.
I remember
heavy.
I've run a few games and my players would go, well, I got this treasure chest. It has 30,000 gold pieces in it. How are you carrying it? Well, I just carry it.
Good luck.
There's 50 gold pieces is a pound. So do some math.
Yeah.
That's like 600 pounds of gold. How do you carry that? You're a human. And they're like, yeah.
I'll just take a bag full.
Yep, there you go. But.
And that's why we came up with cash.
That's why you came up with cash. It is not heavy. It's checks.
Oh, sure.
All that stuff. Now we have magical online phone banking, which is the coolest thing ever.
Sure.
Sponsor us, online phone banking people.
Note of somebody to call. All right. So he's returning from
Spain.
Spain with piles of gold.
On his way out, though.
With an agreement of, I will leave because you've given me money.
I'm leaving. Okay. And he is. And Charlemagne, to this point, has been very much a man of his word. And that was kind of a big deal, especially if you're a king.
Sure.
Foreign policy is 100% your word.
Yeah.
Should be like that today. It's not quite.
Okay.
Got some duplicitous stuff. But he's the face of his nation. So he says, okay, yeah. And then no more trouble between us. I'm leaving.
Nice.
The Moorish leaders, I forget which, I think it was a caliphate that ran it, but I can't remember, and I don't want to get it wrong. So if you know, send that to us. Write it down.
The name of the Moorish leader?
Yes, the Moorish leader, or what that kingdom was
Roger?
called.
Roger Moore?
Roger Moore. Famous Roger Moore. I was going to name one of his films, but I can't remember which Bond movies.
Moonraker.
Moonraker, not one of the best ones.
The Moor Who Loved Me.
The Moor Who Loved Me. Moorraker.
Ooh, Moorraker.
Moorraker. That's actually write that one down.
There. No, note to not do any more James Bond references.
Yep. They're tired.
Yeah.
So as he's leaving, he decides to stop at Palermo, which is owned by the Basques.
Okay.
And just says,
sounds like a great Italian restaurant as well.
Yes. And he just says, I don't think that this town should have walls.
Who said this?
Charlemagne.
Okay.
So he decides to destroy the walls of this town.
Oh.
There's a couple different versions of how far the damage went.
Where's this town?
Palermo's near northern Spain.
So it's in Spain.
It's in Spain.
So he's on his way out of Spain.
He's on his way out of Spain. He's not in his land yet.
Well, I'm not going to attack him. But
I feel like this will be a pain if I have to come back.
If I'm not going to attack, they don't need walls.
They don't need walls.
What do you need walls for? I'm not coming back. You'll be fine.
But he also, it's kind of that, they should just build a toll road. This could have worked as a toll road.
Oh, sure.
This could have been a fortress from which these people acted against him. And his rival in the area, who was also the Duke of the Gascons, who were causing him problems before, operates out of fear.
Okay.
So he's like, this guy's been a thorn in my side. These people might stab me in the back someday. So I'm going to destroy the walls. Some reports say that he destroyed the majority of the city, not just the walls.
Well, it's hard once you get destroying.
Once you get to sacking and taking stuff.
Yeah, we're just going to take these walls down.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, was that a load-bearing wall? Was that holding up your whole society?
Take down the walls on the inside and it collapses onto the town.
My bad.
And then you got to scatter the stones.
Who wrote this account?
So this account is written by a few folks from different areas, but his number one biographer was Einhard. Einhard was a monk who started serving Charlemagne towards the end of his reign in, I believe, 800 is when he first started working for Charlemagne. So he took accounts from soldiers and people who'd been there, from Charlemagne himself. And then, of course, the different reports, I'm not sure who said, they burned it down, and they did this, and they did that, and they took it too far. Charlemagne, of course, isn't going to want to say, yeah, I burned down the whole town, and I killed everybody.
Who wants to admit that?
Nobody. Well,
yeah.
Attila the Hun, probably.
Okay.
That's good propaganda. I killed everybody. Surrender. So Charlemagne makes the local inhabitants very mad. And he's moving very slowly. Okay. Doesn't know the terrain super well. And he's moving out of Spain. This is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, this is. I don't know how this story ends, but
it's not gonna be great. So the locals, the Palermans, I guess would be the term. People from Palermo, then the Duke, who's his kind of rival, the Duke of the Gascons, gets together a force and says, "This is bull."
We told him get out.
We said leave, and as on the way out, you just kicked us, and that. It's like
someone leaving a party. Like, I'm going to go, and then breaking your door.
Right.
Ugh.
Right. And
he said he was leaving.
He said he was leaving. Just the worst. So, and these aren't the people he made the peace with. These are just random people on the way out. Right. So he's just like,
if I may, this sounds like kind of a dick move by Charlemagne.
You are not wrong at all. It's seen by pretty much everyone as a dick move. Even some of the people in his own camp are like, it's kind of a dick move, boss.
What the Charlemagne?
Why are you doing this? So he does this, and he almost immediately gets his comeuppance, because as he's about to leave, he's in this pass. I'm going to screw up the pronunciation because it's French. It's Roncevaux.
Okay.
It's Roncevaux.
Anyone wants to help us with the pronunciation? That'd be great.
Yep, that would be wonderful. And this was in August 15th, 778. So just a few years after he's king of the Lombards. He's in Spain. And as he's leaving, his baggage train gets attacked. The Palermans. They are moving very fast and very light because they did not wear armor.
Because they live there.
They live there. They know where everything is. This is.
We need armor. It's back at the house.
We don't need it. The way they fight is loose bands of soldiers. They got a spear in each hand. They whip one. They have another one. They have bows and arrows too. But they're not using any armor. They're running up and down the mountains and the hills, and they're going through this pass.
They have home field advantage.
So this huge army of Charlemagne is moving very slowly, and the main army is in the front, and they're all wearing this heavy armor, and they're tired, probably. They're going home. It's getting to be nighttime, so that's when the locals attack. There's lots less of them than Charlemagne's army, but they focus on the baggage train. So they attack this very slow-moving train of wagons filled with gold, that they know is full of gold because Charlemagne's been fighting.
I think I've seen this Western.
And they kill everybody.
Oh, no.
Every single person guarding the baggage train. There's this very famous soldier at the time. His name was Roland. And this became a famous song in the Middle Ages, the Song of Roland. And it's about how he stands up like one of kind of the Knights of the Round Table. He was a paladin, which is a top-ranking soldier, knight, warrior. He was the marshal of I think he was the marshal, or he was in charge of the Breton region of the Frankish kingdom. So he was an important guy. He was one of Charlemagne's friends, a trusted field commander, excellent warrior, which is why he was put in charge, along with two other guys who would be considered Charlemagne's friends and counselors. Because you don't have counselors who aren't your friends.
Right.
I
mean, you want them to disagree with you sometimes.
Right. But you don't want some guy who's always just kind of a dick.
Yeah.
Like every meeting, we shouldn't do that. This is a stupid idea.
Good.
You want somebody who's going to work with you, not be obsequious and just be like, yes, sir, everything you say is good, but also not every time you have an idea, they shoot it down. So as they're leaving, they get attacked. Roland gets killed. Two other counselors get killed. Apparently kill a lot of the enemy. They give as good as they get, and it becomes this very famous romanticized, over-the-top thing. Roland becomes this legend of Christian chivalry, even though at the time he's only mentioned like once in history, just as being Charlemagne's friend and counselor.
Yeah, okay.
He's not like world-renowned as this great knight, because Charlemagne's
Right.
the only guy locally who's
He
promoted
just
that.
happened to be in the right place at
He's
the right time.
right place, right time, and an important guy, and he gave a
Yeah.
good accounting of himself. When the Frankish army realizes we're being attacked, Charlemagne rides to the back, takes a while because he's in the front, leads the army back, and it's dead quiet, literally, because everybody's dead.
Yikes.
The locals have robbed the entire baggage train.
Oh, jeez.
So all the spoils from Charlemagne's conquest, from months and months of fighting, sieges, all of his loot, a lot of the everything of value, apart from like foodstuffs maybe are there,
Sure.
but anything that could be picked up and wasn't nailed down is gone,
No.
including all the gold that he extorted to leave.
Yeah.
So all of this great adventure that he just did was for nothing. So his soldiers died. He lost his counselors, and it leaves this really bitter taste in his mouth. It's his only military defeat. It wasn't like this crushing failure, but it just kind of like, to use the example of you leaving the party, you rip the door off,
Yeah.
somebody runs out, kicks you in the balls, and goes back in the house. It's a
Yeah.
great night otherwise.
It's good. It's fine. It's a sinking feeling in my gut when I go home.
Yep. And then you're just like, ugh.
Now, the area, the people that took the gold back, did they then do well? Were they?
They did. They
Yeah.
did a lot better.
Sure.
They probably had more gold than they knew what to do with.
Yeah.
Probably caused inflation. That happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, they actually did quite well for themselves. Like 2 generations later, another French king tries the same thing.
Yeah.
This time they don't go for the baggage. They just wipe out the whole army.
Oh.
So,
They,
lesson learned.
They learned.
but no, because this continues to be a problem region until even modern times. People mess with the Basques, and the Basques just go, nah, this is crap. And they have problems. It's very rugged terrain,
Yeah,
and
okay.
you don't mess with locals in rugged terrain unless you have people who are really exceptionally
Right.
good at that.
Because they know the terrain.
They know the terrain. They're
Yeah.
gonna find you. And just, don't just march around like you are the boss and not plan for it. So that's like the one time Charlemagne doesn't really plan for is, what do I do? What's going to happen next? So he never goes back to Spain.
No.
For the rest of his time as king, anytime something has to happen in Spain, he's just like, you know what? I don't want it.
I don't feel like it.
I don't feel like it.
Had a bad time there.
It sucked. So he finishes there, spends the next few years finishing off his war with the Saxons.
Wrap that up.
Finally does that, has some of the Saxons move to Francia, has some of the Franks move to Saxony. He's consolidating his power, goes back to Rome, where he's been negotiating with the Pope just to talk about some things. He's kneeling down at Mass, and the Pope comes out with this crown and crowns him as an emperor.
Oh.
And Charlemagne
That's an upgrade from king.
is kind of shocked because this has been a plan of his. He's been building an empire, but
Yeah.
he wanted it on his terms.
Right.
He's like, I'm the emperor because I beat the Saxons, I beat the Lombards, I beat the Moors, I did this, I did this, I did this. My people fought, and now it's all because the Pope said, here. So it's been gifted to him.
Ooh.
And that sticks in his craw a little bit. He doesn't really do anything about it, but it kind of takes the fun out of
Right.
being the
I
emperor.
was working towards that. You just give it to
Did
me?
you just give it to me? Yeah,
It's fun.
I did this.
Yeah.
I earned this. It's kind of like getting a lifetime achievement award
While you're still working?
while you're still working,
Yeah.
and never getting an actual award while you're doing it.
Yeah.
So he becomes the emperor. So this is his 3rd crowning. That happens December 25th, 800.
Be on the test.
That'll be on the test. So at 800 AD, big deal. He becomes the emperor. This can kind of cause problems with the Eastern Roman emperor. They still have emperors.
Yeah.
And he manages to make them his buddies.
Oh.
He's always gracious with them, giving them money, giving them big gifts, being fun, being friends, and never saying, I'm the boss. Oddly enough, he gets along with a very, very famous man named Aaron al-Rashid, who's the head of, he rules from, where's Baghdad? He runs this caliphate. He's very, fantastically wealthy. He sends an emissary there who is Jewish. The guy's name is literally Isaac the Jew in history. Sounds like a Sopranos character. We sent Isaac the Jew to talk to him. Whatever. So it's interesting because he's this famous crusader, and the crusaders were always like, anybody who's different, we kill you with sword.
Yeah.
He had his most famous and trusted diplomat was Jewish. A very close friend of his was a Muslim. Aaron al-Rashid is a Muslim, and they were close. They were
So he's a connector.
He's a connector. I mean,
Bridge
as much
builder.
as he was a conqueror, and also a literal bridge builder. He built a 500-foot-long bridge that spanned this massive river.
Oh.
And he did all these great things. And during his time, he had at least 18 kids. He had 4 wives and, so many concubines. Because when you were king, you could do that.
It's good to be king.
Good to be the king. And then, he lived this long, powerful life. He did all of these changes and crafted this empire. And it all started because he became king of the Franks and was able to branch out and grow and expand the empire, which didn't go much past his lifetime, though, because his son, who took over, not very competent.
Nepotism is a rough sport.
Yep, he should have picked somebody better. And one last really important detail, one of the reasons why he's such an important figure, not just for conquests, is he took, at the time, all of the local German stories and had them transcribed.
Oh.
He had them actually written down. He took the German language of the time and had it written out and had it defined. And so he was like this preserver of knowledge and of history, which is a really big deal at the time when that wasn't really happening.
Right.
He's a big fan of reading and writing. He wasn't a famous writer, but he loved being read to. He did write his own, but he didn't write books or anything. He had other people for that. But yeah, it was an important thing too. So he wasn't just this warrior or just a statesman. He was a warrior. He was a statesman. He also believed in the arts. And then when he died, he gave 2/3 of his material wealth so that it would be given as alms to the poor.
Oh.
Which surprisingly didn't make his children super angry.
I think that would make them upset.
A lot of them, he outlived a bunch of them.
Oh.
He lived a long life. He died in 814, so he was...
Emperor for 14 years, by my math.
Yes, emperor for 14 years. He was... Math is hard. That many. In the books, they say he's 72, but my math, 748 out of 814, says he's 64. But his personal scribe said he was 72.
Either way, he lived at least past 60. So.
Lived a long time.
Yeah.
Long time. Famous guy. Important stuff.
All right, we are out of
That's
time.
it?
We're out of time. And we can talk about Charlemagne more, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll touch on him in future episodes.
Probably.
But right now, we're done for today.
Done. So next week.
Next week, Tuesday,
Next week,
we'll be going on Tuesday, October 12th. We'll be discussing the Battle of Hastings.
That's important.
That's
important. Has nothing to do with the fact that the guy who won the Battle of Hastings was named William. And it might be one of my favorite events in history.
Well, let's find out.
Pretty important. So we'll find out, why is that important? Why does it matter?
What year is that?
1066.
1066. All right,
It
so
happened on October 14th, 1066. We're going to find out. Who cares?
What's it all about? I've heard the name.
William
Battle of
the Conqueror,
Hastings.
Battle of Hastings.
Yeah, I heard all that. Don't know what it's about. Let's find out.
I have no idea, but I'll get back to you.
You have a little less time this week. So.
Okay. Yeah, because it's Tuesday. Yeah, I got a couple days.
So you see you Tuesday for history of the week. Comment however you want to comment.
Give us information. Tell us what we got right or wrong.
Talk to you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.